Hey, David.
Hey man, what's going
How
on?
are you, man?
Great, what's happening?
Not much. Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. Where are you at?
Right outside of Chicago.
Got it.
Yeah, we talked probably 4 months ago.
Yeah, yeah. No, I remember. It wasn't very long ago. It seemed like we were just here doing this. Yeah,
Yeah, how about it? You're
yeah,
you're you're a busy guy, man. And that's great to hear. And
yeah, yeah.
it's
Well, look, man, what's the option? Sit around and do nothing and moan and mourn and freak out, So
no doubt. And this is one of those times a lot of people are doing that. It's
yeah,
you're keeping busy. It's great.
you look like you're in Thom Hazaert's house with all your CDs and all your stuff. Funny. Hey, we just
Tom's
got
got
these. Look, we
massive.
just got these in.
Oh, that's cool.
Isn't that
That's
cool?
awesome.
And then we made one of these, which is no cover.
Nice,
And then, of
nice.
course, this, which is just a plain.
That is great, man.
But
That
they
is
do
great.
smell like I used to smoke crack in a previous life before I got sober. And it does smell like the chore boy and the it smells. I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of being
No.
a crackhead, but
Well, it's funny you say that because I'm reading Dave's book, which you are a
yeah,
huge part of
yeah, I know. Yeah,
right now, the
yeah.
Rest in Peace thing. And it's I
It's
mean,
all of that.
it's all of that. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's funny because Slash used to come over to my apartment on like Sunset and Highland, and he had a little dingy apartment behind Tower Records. And so we'd go back and forth to each other's place and hang out, play guitar, and do our thing. And I remember there was this little crackhead kid that I don't know how he somehow came up. And Chuck Beeler was around at that point. And Chuck had he'd like to dabble in the white stuff. And so he somehow he found this guy, and he'd come over to the apartment and over to my apartment, like, who is this fucking guy? And even Slash, remember, he goes, man, he goes, you really got to question a guy with those kind of mannerisms. Yeah, he's like really sketchy, sketchy street, just a street hustle, man. It was, yeah. I remember one day I picked my car. I was literally driving up the street from in that neighborhood, and I see Chuck Beeler coming out from under a house. And I mean, yeah, we were in bad shape. And he and I loaned him my car. I had this little Pontiac Fiero, and I loaned him my car one day, and I always kept my Union 76 gas card up in the visor, like a little the card holder. And I pull in to get gas, and I reach up to get it, and it's not there. I'm like, what the fuck? And I went, fucking Chuck, man. And sure enough, he traded somebody a set of tires on my card for some crack. So
unreal. Yeah, I was reading the book, man, and I felt like I was getting high. You know what I mean? It was like,
it's all
wow,
true. Yeah.
you guys did a ton, and
We were deep in it, man. It was of another level, and boy, it's so hard to get out of that.
Yeah, it was good to see you guys on the other end. Hey, Thom.
Hey, Thom, I thought Scott was over at your house. You there, buddy?
I am.
When Scott first came on the screen, I thought he was over at your house.
Nope.
Of all of his stuff, all of his CDs.
Yeah. I don't have CDs. I have records and cassette. I got cassettes and records. That's it.
Right here. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I actually pulled out, I looked at the set list for No Cover and the track listing. And I mean, it's me, I mean, we're about to say,
it's us too,
It's just, I mean, it's so killer. And I'm looking through my records and CDs, and I didn't buy many cassettes, but this made me pull out a cassette or two. I was like,
yeah,
wow, cool. So I pulled them out, and I thought we'd go through them and tell us why you picked the tunes you picked. Because these are great records all around. So, choosing a tune off of a lot of these records had to be difficult.
Well, we had to make a record because we made these masks. In order to sell the masks, we needed an album.
We needed a record.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
No Cover coming out November 20th. And Jody wanted me to talk about the Youth Foundation before we get started. Let's talk about the Youth Foundation, what you got going on there. You got so much going on. and the coffee company. I know, Thom, you were talking about a new blend for Combat, and it's great to see Combat Records still here because of you guys, and it's just yes, man. I remember Combat growing up, and it's just so great that
me too. I mean, to me, it was like, as a kid, it was like Metal Blade. It was like Megaforce. It was it was in the big three, and then later Road Racer, aka Roadrunner. To me, those were the premier metal, and Music for Nations, and and again, to me, so the Combat thing was just so cool, and like, to me, it was kind of like David's birthright, man. I mean, he really, Combat was the house that Megadeth built, and to me, that's why I thought it was so cool that we got to kind of take that brand and put new, different but similar life into it.
Man, it is great to see. It is awesome. Thank you for that, for sure. But tell me what's going on with the Ellefson Youth Music Foundation.
Yeah, so we did a big event in 2000. God, I don't know even what year it was.
2018.
It was 2018, but before that, kind of the backstory that led up to that is I got inducted into the Iowa Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And that came because we launched a coffee store with Ellefson Coffee back in Jackson, Minnesota. And Jackson is the town I grew up in. And
that came because, I don't know if you read the book that's sitting there behind you, but David, after his parents passed, and he didn't really, feel like he had any business in Jackson. I kind of insisted, like, look, let's do some stuff there. Let's keep in touch with your roots. That's where you came from. And to me, that was always such an important part of the Megadeth backstory and David's backstory that we started doing stuff there. So we did the coffee store there, and I'll let David continue the story. But
as much as Thom appears to be a singer, he's actually my archivist, and because it's true. My brother passed from colon cancer back in, I think, 2000. God, I forget that there's all kind of a blur of the timeline. I think 2014. And my mother was living in a nursing home, ironically the same one she worked at. She took the years off to raise me and my brother. And then when I went to LA in 1983, and of course that led to starting Megadeth, but then she went back to work as a nurse. That's what it was, her training. And she worked another, 15, 20 years and then retired. But she had a stroke, and she was in this nursing home. And so, I knew her days were numbered. And ironically, it's funny, I came home from Europe. In fact, right before I went to Europe, we were playing we were playing Carolina Rebellion in Charlotte. And I got the call. So they said, David, you need to come home, and we need to talk about end of life care for your mother. And she had just turned 80. So I fly home, Mother's Day, ironically, and have the conversation, and so I knew her, the end days were coming. And Megadeth just went to Europe because Dystopia just came out. So obviously we're launching this big campaign. I sent an email over to Dave and the band and management. I said, listen, my mom's, her days are final here, and I said, I just want you to be aware. I don't know if I'm going to fly home off tour or whatever, if something happens, blah, blah, blah. And they said, well, look, we'll just take it as it comes, And I, fortunately, we were able to go through the entire European tour. The irony is that the last 3 dates of the tour, I broke my foot backstage. And I flew home. We ended up canceling the last few dates. I flew home to take care of my foot because 2 weeks later, we're going to South America. As I'm home, nursing my foot and going to the doctor, I get the call saying, listen, you should book a flight and come home. Your mother's, in her last couple of days here. So I fly home to Jackson with a broken foot, and everything. And it goes down. She passes, and we're there for the funeral. So, I mean, talk about the good Lord just kind of lining the schedule up. You know what I mean? I wasn't on tour. I was home. To be there with my mother for her last breath was just an amazing thing. And that was the last of the Ellefsons, I mean, I'm the last of that whole family. My nephews lived there, but it's, so I thought the same thing when I was driving to Minneapolis after the funeral to fly back to Arizona. And then a few days later, I was heading down to South America to start a tour with Megadeth with a broken foot. I thought the same thing. I was literally driving out of Jackson just going, I guess my time is done here. This is it. I don't know if I'll ever be back. And so the irony that literally like a year later, we start the coffee company, that year we started the coffee company, and Thom puts this whole master plan together to bring it back home. We infused some cash into a local coffee store there that we really liked, but was struggling. And we laid our brand over top, and we did this big, it was like a Google trending story when we did it, and, you know, bringing, you know, kind of, you know, a little boy goes to Hollywood, makes good, comes home, you know. And Thom being from the Midwest, you know, he's always called us the Midwest metal mafia, you know. So it's, but, you know, so, you know, I know I'm kind of telling a long story here, but so that led to the Iowa Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Thom, we drive to Jackson, and Thom and our, one of our board of trustees surprises me, says, hey, listen, you know, we're going to do David Ellefson Day. Pick a day, October 9th or 11th. Which day do you want? It's so funny. We picked October 9th. It's John Lennon's birthday, Al Jorgensen's birthday, the day Kiss got handed the keys to the city in Pontiac, Michigan back in 1975 or whatever. So there's kind of this cool rock and roll day, you know, and we went back, we did a big event back there. And I said, obviously, to Thom, I said, man, thank you. What an honor for you to, you know, think of this and to have this proclamated forever in the history books in Jackson, Minnesota as my own day there. But I said, what more can we do to give back? And that's when we launched David Ellefson Youth Music Foundation. And the first place we went to give back was in Jackson, to bolster their music program. Sadly, the kid who sat in and played drums with us, Holden, Breutzman, I believe is how you say his last name. He literally just passed away this last weekend. So, you know, kids dealing with what they deal with, you know, as youth, and I don't know all the details.
Especially now, and I've gotten some of the details, and it's not great. I mean, again, it's so important. And me and David were just talking about this in light of this situation, that we're gonna maybe, you know, put some more focus on mental health and youth mental health awareness, because especially with everything going on right now and the pandemic. And look, I'm a dad, David's a dad. We both have kids, and I see the struggles my kids go through with mental health and certain things, and that definitely reflects back on the situation David was just talking about in Jackson. So, you know, with the Youth Foundation, we've been kind of focused on youth music education, but again, I think we're going to start kind of putting some outreach and some effort into youth mental health awareness and support as well. However, we can find ways to do and support that, you know?
Oh man, that is very admirable of you guys. And you know, and like you say, we need it at a time like this. You know, a lot of people are having trouble, and our kids are really having trouble. I got a kid in college, you know, she doesn't know whether she's in a classroom, out of a classroom. You know, she doesn't know if she's going to come home tomorrow. She just got an email today. She forwarded to me that there's a COVID outbreak. So, you know, it's a kind of a, you know, it's a dark time.
It is. It's a difficult time to navigate. I mean, that's just the scenario you just mentioned is what we're all kind of living with. You know, one day it's this, one day it's this. It's kind of like we don't know what's coming. The best we can do is just, you know, plot our course and just try and stay as true to it as we can, avoid the icebergs. But look, I think that's kind of the world we're all living in, is a lot of uncertainty, a lot of confusion, a lot of, you know, but again, that's the nature of science, and that's the nature of a situation like this. Is going to be constantly evolving, and they're going to be discovering new things about it, and it's going to be, you know, again, especially I'm not an epidemiologist, but you know, this kind of a virus, I mean, they're always going to be mutating, and again, so it's definitely a situation we got to take day by day and month by month, but you know, hopefully we're getting close to being on the other side, you know.
Yeah, I sure hope so, man. But let's keep it upbeat here with your production, man. No cover. You guys are putting together music. You're recording, doing video.
We are.
What do we got for videos from the album so far? We got Peter Same.
Just on Peter's name, we did a couple. You know, Melody Myers did that, who does all of our artwork and most of our video, pretty much all of our videos, all of our stuff. Another gentleman named Thad Brimwell, who's a friend of Al Jorgensen and Liz Kay was there, and he shot some of the footage. So yeah, we did a video for Peter Zane. We're actually talking about shooting a video for Riff Raff if we can get that done. But yeah, No Cover was basically, we've been working on the first full-length Ellefson studio record. Our original release date was Halloween. We were going to, funny enough, Halloween, Megadeth was supposed to be playing in my town in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and we were going to put out the first Ellefson real proper solo record of original material. And then the pandemic hit, and we'd been having some conversations about doing a couple covers, just like, Japanese B-sides and stuff. We talked about doing Rebel Yell and doing a couple of things that did end up being on No Cover. And one day me and David were on the phone. I'm like, dude, why don't we just do a record of covers? First we talked about like an EP, and then it turned into we went from a couple songs to an EP to a 19-song double CD, double LP. But that's the kind of overachievers we are. So yeah, we were just on the phone, and it just kind of came up like, why don't we just do an album of covers? So we did, and it came out great. And we started sucking in our friends. And I think I was the first one. I was just texting with Charlie Benante randomly one day. And I do, why don't you play on something on this? And he ended up playing on Holiday in Cambodia off Wiedersehen and Sheer Heart Attack. And then that led to, I think, Frank Hannon agreed to play on Wasted. And then it just snowballed to everybody we've ever known played on this record. Dave Lombardo, Frank Hannon, Troy Luccketta, Mark Slaughter, Jason McMaster. I mean, I don't even want to say the list because I will miss people, but it's so long and so epic and incredible. Doro, I mean, really, Chuck Beeler, Jimmy DeGrasso,
it's
Brandon from Crowbot. I mean, it's really just an epic.
It really is. Charlie's part of the Mafia now.
Yeah, Charlie's Midwest, baby.
Yeah, I just talked to Carla yesterday, and they're doing an art show together in November.
That's awesome. I actually went down. Me and my daughter I live in Green Bay. I'm like a couple hours from Chicago. Me and my daughter actually drove down a couple weeks ago and went and had coffee and hung out with Charlie and Carla, and it was cool he actually just sent my daughter a big care package of Anthrax shirts. So thank you, Charlie. We love you.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. And Carla, it was great to hear her talk about Chicago, being around here, and she's so happy after 20 years in LA. So it's pretty cool. I love hearing that, because so many people want to go to LA. Yeah.
Well, I'm still adjusting. I've been back in the Midwest like 7-8 years, and I'm still adjusting to not being in LA. You know what I mean? So definitely a transition. Like, I think David's been in Phoenix for like 25 years. He's probably still trying to adjust from not being in LA.
Yeah, for me, I mean, again, I lived through Rodney King riots. I mean, I remember going to a photo shoot for Countdown to Extinction with a Glock 9mm in my car, because it was, martial law and
rock and fucking roll.
Martial law in LA when the other side of town was burning, like Beirut was not a fun thing. So honestly, then I started seeing, carjackings and so honestly, moving out here to Scottsdale, this has been my little piece of paradise for, like 27, 28 years now, and thrilled to be out of LA, to be honest with you. But you're right. I mean, there was a time, back when I remember very clearly the day it hit me. I was rehearsing with my little band back in Jackson, Minnesota, and out in one of the sheds of my father's farm, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I got to get to LA. I mean, I think I literally went up into the house that day and said, I'm changing my hair, dyeing my hair blonde, getting earrings in my ears, and I'm heading to LA like tomorrow. And I was 16, and they said, not so fast there, young man. And, but that set my course. And, I was lucky that my parents supported that. My mother's musically inclined, and she told me before she passed, she said, you really had an awesome life, something very different from being on the farm. And I could tell for her, she was kind of like, good for you. You got out of here. And, me and your dad even talked about it. We never did. Like, you were a pretty cheap son to have because we never did end up paying for college or any of that. And I never called home for money, as broke as me and Dave ever were in LA. I was like,
You did use the credit card. You did use the credit card a couple times.
Well, a couple times on the Killing Is My Business tour, because Steve Sinclair at Combat, speaking of Combat, as much as you guys are all hailing it, me and Dave were like,
yeah, you lived it.
We were running to get the hell away from those guys, and then got an override for the next 4 Megadeth albums and had a ton of cash to sign all the bands you guys grew up on. But
it's so funny. All the bands, I've talked to so many bands who are on Combat after you, and they had a great experience. That's why I always say, Megadeth built that house, man. You guys were the ones who were the first ones there, struggling to get up the mountain. After you guys, everybody just sort of coasted. They So financially,
it was a painful year of construction, believe me. But yeah, no, you're right. There was a time when you had to move, and I clearly remembered the day and that it shifted, and it was after Nirvana and Seattle had hit. You know, the people in the ivory towers of the record companies on Sunset Strip in Los Angeles, you know, they used to just go out with their expense account, go down to the Sunset Strip, see bands in LA, sign bands all day long, and they didn't have to work that hard. And then all of a sudden Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Seattle showed up. And I remember the record industry was like, what the hell are you people doing, talent scouts? Get out of town, go find us the next Nirvana. And that was the day that everybody was going to, you know, they were looking for Raging Slab. I mean, people were going to Oklahoma and Minnesota and, you know, and it's funny, you know, then Wind Up Records came out of that.
Yeah.
And of course they were in Florida, and then they had bands like Evanescence who were out of like Little Rock, Arkansas, and
Creed
out of Florida. And, you know, then of course Limp Bizkit later came along, and they were just, you know, out of Jacksonville. So, I mean, what was nice about it is Seattle, you know, for all the grief that it gets from heavy metal, you know, it really turned the corner on a lot of things. And what it did is you didn't have to suddenly move to LA or New York anymore in order to get discovered. You know, you could, and then of course the internet came along, which made all this stuff
and destroyed everything.
Well, I mean, a couple of our friends, I mean, look, you know, our friend Post Malone, I mean, look at him. Yeah. He put a track up on YouTube and suddenly got the interest of all these rappers. You know, so did Tobias, you know, Forge from Ghost. Yeah. You know, he did the
That's
same
true.
thing.
They basically broke on MySpace.
Yeah, he broke on MySpace. So, you know, all of a sudden, you know, the internet started to allow people to have an opportunity. And of course, look, it still has to be great, and it still has to be compelling. It still has to draw you in. But I mean, look at us. I mean, I'm in Megadeth, but you know, we're locked down, pandemic here in the middle of nowhere, all of us. And, you know, together, me and Thom have been able to launch a coffee company, a 501c3 nonprofit, our record label, relaunch Combat, and now basically have Ellefson as a solo career by way of the internet, the same way that a lot of other big superstars have done. And yeah, look, I've got a name, I've got a fan base, but you know, at the end of the day, it's a new band with a new name and a new sound, and it still has to be great and stand on its own.
Yep, and that's definitely the key. I mean, it's all about the music and the song. You know, I mean, if you're not doing something that's good, really doesn't matter. You know who you're talking to, who you are, and you know what I mean.
And No Cover really was just like a fun. I mean, look, it was really just a fun departure, and again, just sort of a stalling tactic. I mean, look, we're really excited about the actual original material we wrote, and No Cover came out amazing, and I'm so proud of it. But I mean, honestly, I think we're both really. I was just having fun with our label today, talking about the plan for next year for the studio record and how that's going to come out. And so again, I think No Cover is amazing, and I kind of blew all of my wildest expectations, especially how we made it and how quickly and how it just kind of came out of nowhere. But I think we're really covering both with this great cover record and then a really great record of great original material that we wrote together, you know?
How close are you on that original material?
You know, I mean, we're coming along well with it. You know, what's interesting about it, you know, I had come home from Nashville. Me and Dirk and Dave were there in Nashville cutting the Megadeth record basic tracks late May into early June. And it was right as soon as I got home, that's when me and Thom got on the phone and this whole conversation about No Cover started. We were working, you know, pretty much up until about mid-May, we were full steam ahead on the Ellefson original record. And, you know, an ironic twist of fate, taking 2 months to work on No Cover, forced a chance to step back, get away from the original material, work on all these songs here. And, you know, when you're digging into these cover songs, look, first of all, half the work's done because the song's already written, which is great. But you're digging into songs that you realize, okay, there's a reason why these, they may not have been the big smash hits. A lot of them, Not Fragile, Sweet
Carrot Loose.
You know, there's Holiday in Cambodia. A lot of these things were kind of some deeper cuts, and yet, you know, it's funny, they resonate with all of us. And so you realize, you step back and you kind of digging into how other people played and how other people wrote. And quite honestly, this was a really cool season of really studying the art of songwriting, even though that wasn't the intention, and we didn't go into it going, today I'm going to school to study songwriting.
Right.
It has that effect on you. And as we then went back, as we closed up the mix sessions and, kind of we're moving on from the no cover recording, we started digging into our Dropbox folder of our original material, and it really gave us a good perspective to step back away from it. And I'm having that same experience with the writing of the Megadeth record, because we're in year 3 going into year 4 now, so really taking our time with that. And so I'm having that same experience with Megadeth, and now to have that same experience over here with the Ellefson record, to go, look, we don't have to just rush this thing out. We can take our time. We've got in our mind a timeline that we want to stick to, but the songs have to be great because the songs are going to stand forever. I put out records where they fell. You release your first song by 11 a.m. and by 1 p.m. the record's dead because the people are like all thumbs down.
Right.
Big bands and little bands that I'm in, and I've also had the opposite with big bands and even our little Ellefson band where you put something out and it's like, wow, where did that come from? And that's the pop you have to have, because literally a record can get wings, or it can literally die within an afternoon on the internet. And it's all about first impressions, so I think with that said, the original record is definitely on the right track. And you've heard some of what we pushed out with Simple Truth
and Over Now. And
so you get the indication of where we're heading with this thing. And I think No Cover is just another, again, this you're kind of like, oh yeah, okay, we get it. This is pretty.
Another cool thing about No Cover is it gave me an opportunity to really explore a lot of things vocally, because I sing on 15, 16 songs on this record, and they're all completely different, man. I mean, I sang everything from Queen to Dead Kennedys to Twisted Sister to Def Leppard to, to BTO to Nazareth.
How about Beth? I mean, come on. It's funny, Thom, you say that, because I think that's probably stylistically one of our sort of probably biggest conversations between me and Thom. Thom's 10 years younger than me. He grew up with a different generation. And of course, I've taken these bands out on tour with me with Megadeth. We've taken out STP, Alice in Chains, Korn, Cold Chamber, Limp Bizkit played right before us on Ozfest. So I've watched the new generations come up under us. I've literally watched not just the sound of the music, but the body language, in my head, we were all like headbanging, and then Korn comes along and they're going, right? They're doing this whole thing and they're kind of doing, so it isn't, it's the groove, it's the body language, it's the clothes, it's
the hair,
about the culture. Yeah, the hair. So as we started working on things, and look, everybody's got their, one thing about a voice is that's the voice you're born with. And, Thom is absolutely a master at sitting down, and when an idea hits, I mean, he will sketch out a lyric literally within minutes. And you're like, and it's kind of like when I sit with Dave Mustaine and a riff falls off his fretboard of his guitar and you go, that's freaking awesome, man. And it's doesn't even sound that hard. You're like I could have come up with that. That wasn't that hard, but he did.
But
you know what I mean? And that's and Thom's got that same thing with his lyrics. He'll sit there and suddenly this idea will just fall out of him, and you're just like, dude, whoa, wait, hold on, that's freaking awesome, man. And we'll like kind of recreate a chord structure, and we'll move things around. Last time Thom's coming out here this week to Arizona, for some stuff, and when he was here a couple months ago, we literally finished a live Zoom kind of like one of our streams like this. Sits down on my couch, picks up my guitar, and started, hey, here's an idea that I've had for a few years, and plays this thing. And it's the beauty of what collaboration really is that I got this idea, I've taken it this far, and when someone else hears it, they go, oh my God. And together you finish it, you take it to completion. And we really have that kind of writing partnership between me and Thom, and our guitar player, Andy, over in Italy. He's a champ, man. We can throw anything at the guy and he just whips it around. Same with Bumblefoot. We can throw
it's almost become like a competition at this point. Like we
well, we can throw anything at Bumble, even vocally. Bumble, as much as he's an amazing guitar player, he's as good or even better of a singer.
He is my secret weapon. I tell you this. I do something it doesn't feel complete until Bumble throws some harmonies on it. Look, and I do a lot of harmonies, a lot of stuff, and secondary voicings, but Ron just has this thing, like our voices work so well together, man. And I always send it to Ron. He throws harmonies on it. And then it's like, oh, it's done. You know what I mean? It's the craziest thing, man. I love that guy so much. And I'm so honored, you know, to get to play with him and David and just in this collective of literally some of the most talented people on fucking earth. You know what I mean?
Really, it is.
The bar is pretty fucking high. Let me tell you, I got to bring it, you know?
I mean, this record, this No Cover record, is a massive collaboration of just, you know, I mean, I'm seeing names, and a lot of people don't know these names too. You know, or they're not huge names. A lot of them, some are, but like a guy like Brandon Yeagley, I mean, the guy is incredible.
Isn't he amazing? I mean, my God, and Love Hurts, and you know,
I know that was so cool. You know, when we did Love Hurts, and then he just has this like Southern honey thing with his voice, man, that just smoothed it. I liked it with my voice, but then when we threw his on there, I was like, yeah, that's it, you know?
Yeah, he's incredible.
An amazing guy, too, an amazing guy, you know?
Yeah, and that's I mean, that's really, I think that's a key to a lot of stuff. You get great, you know, you can put a big band together of all these great players and big names, but if they don't like each other, it's not going to work, man.
Well, we found with this stuff, and I've always seen this, you know, I've done stuff with Metal Allegiance and whatnot too, and a handful of all-star things, is, you know, first of all, the song has to really call the shots, you know? So as we were putting these songs together, Thom was, you know, the singer, as I'm the bass player, and he plays guitar, et cetera, Paulo, our drummer. And then we would kind of start splitting it out from there, you know, like to get Mark Slaughter, you know, who's a dear friend, and to have him join in on the Fastway track, Say What You Will, for instance, you know, and it really, I think that's been one of the funnest things with this record, was to blend these voices, you know, and it's like a heavy metal choir, right? To blend, you know, Tom's full diesel, man. I mean, he's coming straight through the brick wall. And then to have these nuances with Brandon and Jacob Bunton and Mark Slaughter and, you know, Jason McMaster to come in to just sort of add these nice little greasy things on top. And it's just really, it's, you know, Al Jorgensen, you know.
Oh, God, yeah.
You know, I mean, Al, you know, Al just, he just takes, you know, he takes anything. And of course, he really, you know, he added his own little melody to it, and he's friends with the Cheap Trick guys. In fact, as soon as we had the thing done, he sent it over to Robin Zander, and right away got the thumbs of approval, you know. And
that's good.
Dax just hit me this week and said, hey, love Al Wiedersehen, and that's Rick's son, and now the drummer in Cheap Trick, you know. So it's, you know, that's the other thing with this, is we knew that our, you know, these are our heroes, of course. They're our contemporaries now, but they grew up, you know, our heroes. And it's like, you know, they're going to hear this. So it's like, you don't want it to suck. Like, you want it to be good. You know, KK Downing, you know, we just played with them a year ago. And you're like, okay, you know, when Free Will Burning comes out, it's like, we want to send in the mix, say, hey, you know, hope you dig this, you know, we're trying to make you some money too while we're at it, you know. You know, but, you know, these guys are all of our friends, and we've gotten to play with a lot of them. And you know, so I think for, you know, me and Thom, and again, Charlie Benante, same with Al Jorgensen. I mean, Al, you know, we were talking about that when we were shooting the video, that Al said, he goes, you know, it's funny that Cheap Trick is this one band we can all agree on, you know, regardless of industrial, thrash metal, you know, whatever it is, whatever kind of what rock we grew up on. Cheap Trick is just a unanimous eye of the tornado. It's a safe spot in all rock, you know, that everybody just loves a version of Cheap Trick.
I think it's kind of like AC/DC too. I don't know anybody that doesn't like AC/DC. You know what I mean?
Hey, I just saw something really cool yesterday. Monty Connor, you know, from Nuclear Blast, he's a real historian, and he's been sharing these album cover things. I didn't know that. So Power Age, the actual album was called Power Rage, right? That they kind of put the word together, but their intention was Power Rage. And that the photo shoot for that and Highway to Hell were done at the same time. I did not know that.
Yep.
Wow.
Very cool. Wow. Yeah, it was very cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. And then everything was kind of done in post, the little horns on Angus and whatever, you know, that was all kind of done later. So something cool that David was touching on that I just wanted to, you know, it's cool though. We grew up in kind of, I'm a generation behind David where, you know, Megadeth was my favorite fucking band. Tesla, Slaughter, Slayer. I mean, I really grew up in this weird space between just 80s hard rock and metal and then I kind of, when I got into the business, started working, I worked with Korn and Limp Bizkit and all those bands. So I kind of, and it's funny because when we started this band, we were both kind of like, we don't want this to be a thrash band, and it's not. I mean, it's this weird space, energy and musically somewhere in between, maybe a Korn and a Sepultura, or maybe like Used or Glassjaw kind of energy. But I also grew up on punk rock, but I grew up on Wasp and Megadeth and Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses, and it's cool because and David kind of grew up on a lot of the 70s stuff, and I think all this stuff we're doing just kind of falls right in between that, which is really cool. It's really hard to nail down, but I think that's kind of why the stuff we're doing is it's contemporary, but it's really very throwback hard rock.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And like you were saying, Dave, doing this before doing the Ellefson record had to help because, these are your influences. This is where you come from. This is what you guys are into. I think it probably would help you focus in.
I sat down and wrote some riffs and bounced some things over to Andy that were pretty thrash sounding, you know what I mean? And maybe part of that is because my head was kind of also part way in a Megadeth album at that point, so I was kind of thinking along those lines. So I sent it to Andy. He goes, "Oh, that's freaking great. It's awesome." And it is cool. But then we step back and listen to it, and and you kind of go, "Is this something Tom's going to sing over?" It's kind of like when I send something over to Megadeth, I have to go, "Is this really something Dave's going to sing over? Like, is he? Can I really see him on stage playing this?" And if I'm really honest about a lot of it, I can't see him doing it. And then I'll take that track or that song or that riff and I'll go elsewhere with it because it has to be believable in the band. And, for Thom to, that's one thing about singing. You can play a lot of stuff on a guitar. You're like, hey, I'm getting paid to be here, plug in, play the part, right? But when you're singing, you really have to be in the track, and really with a conviction, whether it's light or it's heavy, whatever it is, because your voice doesn't lie. You know what I mean? And so at some point that's probably the most transparent conviction of your intention, is when you're really, when you're singing. So a lot of this stuff is, we'll write a track and we step back, and Thom just this week bounced something over that he's been talking about and it hadn't hit him. And suddenly we had a phone conversation the other night, and me and Andy wake up the next morning and there's this demo, on WhatsApp from Thom, and you're like going, "Oh my God, you nailed it, dude. That's it." And that's just what it is. Sometimes it just takes a moment, the inspiration hits, and there it is.
And it has. I mean, a lot of this stuff, we had like 15, 20 songs sitting in the Dropbox, but it really stylistically just kind of came down to what I connected with and connected with me. And again, I can sing thrash, and we did Hammer Comes Down and some heavier stuff on Sleeping Giants, but to us, that's kind of conquer ground for David. You know what I mean? He's in the, greatest thrash band in the fucking world. Like, we don't need to retread that. Let's do something different. Let's do something just, that we can really emotionally. And again, I don't really write about, again, there's some political things, but it's not, I don't write like Steve Harris or even, certain people that just, I don't write historical stories. I don't write, I can't really write like progressive thrash stuff about wizards and demons, and I write everything. I'm from that kind of emotional school of thought as a writer, you know what I mean? And that's, where kind of what I think sort of denotes the connection to these songs, where I can kind of come up with something a little. And look, on some of that stuff, Hammer Comes Down, and some of that stuff, like and it turned out great at the end of it, and I love it, and I'm proud of it. It was the first stuff me and David did together. But if you listen to Sleeping Giants, Vultures is more me and what I do. Hammer was cool, but it was just this kind of pseudo Pantera, blah, 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 which is like, yeah, that's been done, man.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying, definitely. And I think that comes with time and playing together and all that, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, for sure. And people, I've done that. I played in things, and they're like, "Oh, let's play thrash, let's do this." I'm like, dude, I've done that my whole freaking adult career. I mean, in Megadeth, and quite, I like Thom said, I would agree. I'm in the greatest thrash band ever. I mean, I play in a band with Dave Mustaine, who essentially invented the genre, you know? And so for me, and it's hard even in Megadeth to move too far away, because there's sort of, you know, we always call it stay in your lane. And Megadeth, we've done that in the late 90s. We experimented and we saw where the line was. We've probably drifted over it a couple times, and the fans revolted and they pushed us back. And so we know. So for me, just artistically, I write all the time. I got electric guitars, basses, I got a piano out here, acoustic guitar. I'm always writing stuff. And so it's nice to be able to bring things into Thom and Andy and just say, hey, what do you guys think about this? And not have any real boundaries. You know, it's like everything is a yes until it's not, you know, rather than, you know, as opposed to something like Megadeth, it's kind of like everything is the boundaries are pretty tight, and as it should be, you know. Again, I'm looking at your shirt, it says Megadeth with an image, like I want it to sound like what it looks like, you know what I mean? So, you know, but over here with Ellefson, I really enjoy that, you know, really, you know, we've got the Sleeping Giants now, no cover now, you know, this next album. So really album 3 of our discography is it's developing quickly, vastly, and it's really turning into something that goes beyond, you know, what a lot of people have heard me do in the other settings that I've, and again, and not just Megadeth, but with Metal Legions and Soulfly, and I've, you know, done, you know, I've had Temple of Brutality, F5. I've done a lot of stuff, you know, in the last 20 years. And the last 20 years alone, you know, not to mention the 20 years before that of the more iconic Megadeth stuff, you know?
Right. Yeah. And as fans, I mean, we want to hear you reach out, you know, we want to hear you play. You know, we hear the Megadeth stuff. We love it. We want to hear other stuff for sure. And this is I mean, I love this record, man. 19 songs of, you know, and these are songs that really hit nailed to the gun. I thought I was the only one that had that record. That's, you know, I love it, man.
I have it on vinyl right over there.
Man, I love that record. You know, and I think David, we talked about Not Fragile, one of my favorite songs. I think it's the heaviest song on the album. I really do.
It's so funny because I don't think Thom had even heard the track, and he kind of it sort of agreed with me to go along with it, and then got in and sang it. And after he sang it, he goes, "Oh my God, dude, I think this is my favorite song on the album."
and I think it still is. I mean, I had heard it, but again, that was before my time. I was born in 1975. You know what I mean? So I knew the album existed, and I'd heard it, but I didn't know it. It wasn't like, oh my God, this is my favorite song. But then once I got into it, and it still is. I think one of my favorite songs on the record. It's funny, that one I could kind of. A lot of these, there wasn't a lot of room, man. Twisted Sister, you know, I didn't want it to be, you know, I love stuff like, you know, in Shadows Fall, The Dangerous Toys, but I didn't want it to be that. I didn't want it to be detuned. I didn't want it to be, you know, I wanted to, and I think we both wanted to keep these pretty faithful to the originals. And I think we did, but I think that one was one of the ones that was a little heavier and gave me a little room to make it my own a little bit more than some of the other stuff, you know?
Yeah. I remember last time we talked, Dave, I said that riff when it comes in is like, it's like a sledgehammer. And, you know, being Sledgehammer, another tune on the album.
Another song that opens up side B. Yeah, exactly. Yep. I know that Not Fragile record, man, that was a heavy friggin' record.
Really?
The stuff that was coming out around that time was Styx, you know, you know, some Styx stuff, but also Sweet Desolation Boulevard.
Yes.
Kiss Destroyer came out a couple years later. So that, you know, for me, you know, I would say, you know, 50s were this kind of the invention of rock and roll. The 60s was the experimentation of rock and roll, but the 70s was the refining. They started to make records that sounded good. Guitar tones were starting to get good. They were very exploratory with Slide, the Talk Box, the Wah Wah. You know, it was this really a huge advancement in the refinement of the electric guitar during the 70s. You know, bass started to sound good.
And amplification, I think, evolved a lot in the 70s too, which I think is a big part of it, you know?
Yep. And, you know, Jack Douglas, I mean, man, he made some of my favorite records. You know, Cheap Trick and all kinds of stuff. And then, you know, look, Sound City, that movie Sound City. I think they recorded Not Fragile at Sound City.
Did they?
I think they did.
Really?
And also Auf Wiedersehen. They recorded Heaven Tonight over there.
Wow.
So,
I was actually there with Slipknot when they recorded Iowa there, and it was such a cool place. Seeing the Fleetwood Mac plaques and just the history in that place.
Yeah,
Again, as a kid, I was kind of like, it's so funny. David moving to LA as a kid from the Midwest, and I've talked about this a lot, was one of the things that inspired me to do it, man. I got on a Greyhound bus and, moved to Hollywood the same way David did to go pursue my dreams, which were a little different. I wasn't going there to be in a band. I was going there to do A&R and do marketing and do the stuff I did. And then eventually I just ended up in a band when I'm 45. Figure that out.
Give up reality for the dream, right? Reality sucks. So I'm going to go be in a band.
There's a kind of a funny tie-in with all of this, and you guys cutting a record like this is turning people on to a lot of songs that they didn't know and they're gonna grow to love, or they had. Here's the story for me. Auf Wiedersehen, that's a classic Cheap Trick record that I grew up with, but when I was growing up, you listen to the 2 or 3 songs that you loved over and over and over and over, and I didn't, as a kid, as an 8-9-year-old, explore the entire record sometimes, and that was one of them. I heard the first time I heard Auf Wiedersehen was Anthrax, oddly enough, with Charlie. They did a cover of it, and I said, this is a Cheap Trick tune, and I have it, sitting behind me as I'm listening to the Anthrax tune.
You know what's funny about that? Megadeth played Auf Wiedersehen once in Japan. I think it was on the Euthanasia tour, Euthanasia Cryptic Writings. We wanted to I think we were playing like 5 nights in Tokyo. We thought, all right, we got to change the set list up, if nothing else for the bootlegs, and we played it one time, and, we thought like, oh my God, Cheap Trick live at Budokan, everybody will know this song. It'll bring the roof down. Well, I guess what we didn't realize is our fans were probably not even born when Live at Budokan came out. Right. So they're very young. And so here we are, we play it and they're looking at us like, what the hell song is this? Like, what is this? We've never heard this. And it's on a couple of bootlegs that are out there. But yeah, it's never, so it is funny that I was thinking about that. Charlie and I, both in Anthrax and Megadeth, we've played that song.
Well, I say this all the time too. Anthrax is what got me into 70s Kiss. And I agree. I think the first time I really got into Auf Wiedersehen was when Anthrax did their version of it. But Anthrax, me and Charlie were just talking about this the other day, like pop culture wise, so much of the things I like and I am into, Stephen King, comic books, so much of that shit came from Anthrax, man. And the pop culture tinge stuff they had in their stuff, and musically, all of their covers, and it really, I can't speak enough to the influence that Anthrax has had on me, both as a fan and just a person,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, completely. And they've gone through many phases. Like that particular phase with Auf Wiedersehen is the John Bush era.
John Bush era, the Sound of White Noise, which I loved.
I absolutely love. Armored Saint was one of my favorite bands. I love John Bush. I wasn't much of a Belladonna fan at that time. Then when Joey comes back, it's like, wow. I mean, what did I miss?
I got to have both a pretty good experiences with that. I love John. He sang on a demo for me of a track called "If You Were God" that I wrote back in
which was on Sleeping Giants.
Yeah, which is on Sleeping Giants. Yep, and we play it live.
We're re-recording it for the new record.
Yeah, it's one of those songs that you hear it. If you've never heard it before, you just kind of start grooving and bobbing your head to it. It's just kind of a crowd pleaser, But then I played with John, in Metal Allegiance. We've done some things at some shows where he's come up, and we've done Room for One More, these kind of things. And it's just like, God, you hear how just what a great singer he is, and how cool he was in Anthrax. And then I remember when we did the first Big Four show in Poland, in Warsaw, and it was this first moment where we're all coming together. It was the first one, and it was kind of like, how's everybody going to behave? Everybody going to be cool? And I remember we were all standing backstage. Joey had just come back to Anthrax. I had just rejoined Megadeth. we were all waiting. Anthrax went on first, and we were all waiting to hear Joey sing on stage, you know, and it was in front of 100,000 people.
Right.
And it was like, and we're all sitting there going, holy hell, man, he's hitting all the high notes, he's hitting the stuff. And then they played the John Bush song or two, and he sang it. And it was just like, wow, that's, you know, David Lee Roth wouldn't sing any of the Sammy Hagar stuff. You know what I mean? Yet, you know, here's Joey. He's, you know, he's like, hey, I'm back in the band. I'm going for it. And of course, I was playing some stuff off Endgame, which is a record that I didn't record, but it was the record Megadeth was promoting at that time, along with then, of course, Rust in Peace 20th anniversary. So, you know, I had that same experience. It's like, oh, hey, you know what? I'm a fan. I actually like the Endgame record. There's great riffs and cool. I think Dave and Andy Sneap did a great job on that record. And so, you know, that's kind of what it is when you come back. It's like, hey, you dig into some of the stuff that happened when you weren't there, you know? So it's,
man, those two couldn't be any more different. Joey Belladonna and John Bush. I mean, when John Bush came into that band, because they were kind of that New York, a little bit of hip hoppy, not hip hop, but you know, it had an attitude kind of, and he was a higher pitch. And then John Bush comes in, and it's manly, man. It's a punch in the face. You know what I mean? Yeah. I was like, yeah.
Well, when we played in Orange County last year, Chris Poland came out and played with us, and John Bush came out and did If You Were God and Room for One More, and I got to sing Room for One More with John Bush, and I was just smiling like a nerdy kid. Like all those little moments that night, getting to play with Chris Poland and John Bush in one show. It's like, Jesus.
You know, it's funny. You know, God, you're right, Tom. I totally forgot we did do Room. I thought we did, and then you're right, we did do that. And funny, when Chris came up, we were at sound check and just kind of checking, and all of a sudden he comes over to me and goes, "Hey, remember that thing we used to do? Like, you know, you played like the beginning of These Boots Were Made for Walking," and so he said, "Play that," you know, because we're gonna go into, I don't know, P-Cells or something, you know, I haven't frickin' played that since he was in the band in 1987, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like this moment to reconnect with Chris, and he brought it up. He's like, you know, it's so funny how, you know, we hadn't played together playing that music again in 30 some years, you know, and all of a sudden we were just on stage yesterday, you know, and I'm just playing and
that's so cool.
It was very cool. And I wanted him to just shine because, I mean, you get Chris on stage and you get him in the moment, man, and that dude just frickin', you know, he just goes places you just would never imagine because he's not your typical rock and roll guitar player. He's just he's like a Jeff Beck or something. He's just on another plane of existence.
Yeah, Chris is a fucking alien, man.
He is, man. And that's what we love about him.
You know, and as a fan, I mean, it's so great to hear stuff like that because you guys are like family to fans, you know, and you're a fan yourself, you know that.
Yeah.
You know, you want to hear great things about you know, your idols, man.
Well, and that's why it's been so important to me and David. I think we're the ones who really keep in touch and with those other pieces of the Megadeth legacy with Chuck Beeler and Chris Poland and some of these other guys, Jimmy DeGrasso's, even on No Cover Man, Chuck Beeler's on it, Jimmy DeGrasso's on it, Dirk is on it, you know. So I think that's, you know, kind of become something. You know, I work with Chris and we're writing a book together, and we reissued Return to Metalopolis on Combat, and you know, I'm helping Chuck out with some stuff, and so I think it's cool for us to kind of keep those branches connected to the other pieces of the Megadeth legacy, and to me that's been one of the coolest things of this whole experience with David as a fan, just getting to connect with these other guys and do things with them and help to push that forward, you know?
Yeah, and it's awesome. It really is. It's too cool. And you know, another thing with Def Leppard, you know, I saw you guys talking about you know, a whole group of you guys talking about the Van Halen years when Eddie passed, and that was such a great session. And you know, the two bands really, you know, the Dave and the Sammy, you know, that discussion was really you know, you can like this and like this, but you know, usually don't, you know. It's,
you know what I realized about
very
that?
different.
Since we had that discussion, I was just driving around the other day in my car, and there was a Sammy era Van Halen song on. And you know what I realized about that era is I didn't like Eddie's guitar tone during that era. It was very safe. It was very processed. That's the thing I loved about, especially they've got that first 3-4 records of Van Halen, is his guitar tone was just like fucking, the amps were just,
it ripped.
just ripping and completely unbridled.
Right.
But one thing that's funny is I love Eddie's keyboard playing during the Sammy years. Like, he's a fucking amazing keyboard player, and you know, he's talking about that being in fact, one of the funniest ones is when he was getting inducted into the Smithsonian Institution, and he was saying how if you haven't seen that, go on YouTube and watch it. It's fantastic. It's a great story, and because he's a little hard of hearing, you know, having played rock and roll his whole life. And but he's talking about how he had to turn the pages for his piano teacher at a piano recital, and how he said, he goes, look, I learned pretty much by ear, you know, and I could read the notes, but I pretty much learned by ear, and I got called out on it because my piano teachers want me to turn the page, and I didn't realize where we were because I didn't really follow the notes, and he's looking at me like, turn the page, and that's when he busted me. He's like, you haven't been paying attention in class, and that's kind of what it is for a lot of us. You know, a lot of us have this musical education, but the truth of it is, you know, we're road warriors, man. We're out making records. We're touring the world. We're playing by feel. This conversation is by feel. When we get on stage, it's by feel. We get in the studio and write and record music. It's a feel, you know, and that's the thing. And it's funny. I remember this when we were writing early Megadeth stuff. If it felt good in the room, it always translated out onto the stage and to the audience.
Yeah.
Even before Megadeth put records out, I could just feel that. And it's the same thing here. You know, and usually Thom leads the charge. You know, we were over in Italy, and he's like, hey, before we're rehearsing for the tour, he says, why don't we write a song today? You know, just kind of out of thin air, just pull something out. And we wrote Simple Truth. Awesome. Our very first song we wrote together, we were on tour in December of 2018 on a solo tour, and Thom says, hey, let's go in the studio tonight and write a song. And I picked up a guitar, and between us, we wrote Vultures. And that was the first song we wrote together. And that's when we knew not only were we good performers together, but we thought the same to be able to write together. And we could move ideas forward and complete ideas, you know. And a lot of the Ellefson stuff it's pretty simple, you know, it really is. I kind of go way old school Ramones with it, and kind of just keep it real punk rock and real simple. And Andy Martingelli is a fantastic guitar player, and he's a vice president of a music school, so he's actually got all of the academia to really. He could take my really dumb ideas and make them sound really cool. You know what I mean? But in my mind, I'm like, you know, full on the Clash and, you know, freaking the Ramones. You know, I'm just kind of punk rocking this stuff, and so we all have a place here, and it's really cool to watch everybody, you know, bring their ideas to the table.
Yeah, man. I think the best bands are, you know, teams, just like sports teams, you know. The best ones are it's a team effort, you know, for sure.
Well, it's real simple. You're either raising the bar or you're lowering the bar, you know, and that's that. To me, it's black and white. Either you're walking in the room making the place better, or you're walking in the room kind of going, you know what I mean? And there's no time for
Well, and to me, when bands seemingly are always at their best when they're fresh, when they're new, when they still like each other, when they still get along, when there's still that initial, it's like when you date a girl, you know what I mean? There's that initial excitement where everything's still fucking awesome all the time. Yeah. I mean, that's why most bands' first couple records are their classic records, Van Halen, Motley Crue, you know what I mean? And some continue to make great songs, but I don't think that fire is always in those first couple records, man. And where I think we're still in the honeymoon, where we still got that fire, and we're just discovering what we can do together. And every day we find new shit we can do, and it just gets cooler and cooler, you know?
Because we don't live together.
Yeah, man.
The pandemic, we're spread apart, you know?
Maybe that's the key to keeping that fire, man. Exactly. You know, maybe this pandemic is what we needed, you know?
Yeah. Or at least being able to work remotely from across the country. I mean, look, Megadeth all lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, right? So again, we don't have to do that. So it's a little more comfortable, I think, you know.
Yeah. Keeps us from getting strung out on drugs too.
We can be best friends from a distance.
Yeah, exactly. I love you from a distance.
There's no shit. I'm reading Dave's book, you know, and I'm reading all of that, you know, what you guys were doing, and it's like I'm uncomfortable. You know, it was like, Wow.
Yeah, I've had people say I had to go to an NA meeting after I read that.
Wait till you read Chris Poland's book. That's all I got to say about that.
Well,
I'm going to have to go to
everybody has a piece. Everybody has a kind of a corner in that legacy,
Yeah.
And that, of course, the Rust in Peace is such a big story because of how that record was so received, and and all that it's just held in this high regard by the fans and the press and everything. So there really is an amazing story to come out of the darkness to actually get that thing done.
No doubt.
But
Chris and Gar made the Daves look like Boy Scouts. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, Chris and Gar, they recruited us into their lair of demonic whatever it was they were doing,
Wow. Yeah, it's crazy to read. I'm just not a guy that got into those things. I drank my fair share, that's for sure. But didn't do any heroin or coke
but in the Midwest, look, I went to keg parties. We, smoke weed, go to keg parties. It's kind of what we did. It was all pretty elementary, and I got to, LA, and
then you got drafted into the pros.
Yeah, look, when I got to LA, it was 1983. Cocaine was on the cover of Time magazine. It was like, that was the pandemic and the epidemic running around Hollywood was the cocaine use, and it was just there. Look, Motley Crue, Quiet Riot, MTV. It was everything we loved about frickin' rock and roll. As Eddie Trunk once said, the 80s are like the 60s. If you remember it, you weren't there.
Right.
They really were. The 80s kind of were like that. It was all good fun. It was not dark. It wasn't heavy. And that's the thing that as the decade changed into the early 90s. There's Mother Love Bone. Of course, their singer passed, and we get we get Pearl Jam out of that, of course, which is great, and Nirvana, a lot of this, kind of what they call shoegazer rock. But that generation and that music that was their backdrop and that spoke to them was very introspective. It was very kind of, we're a misunderstood generation, we're a lost generation. The 80s were very much a celebratory generation of the
80s was heavy metal parking lot. It
was it was very much a party, but by the 90s the party ended.
Well, that's perfectly put.
But by the time I got to the party, it had ended. So
it ended. It was funny. Tom and I will go to the Rainbow and sit there and eat pizza and talk business. I go, dude, if you only knew what this was like back in 1983 and 84, this was like a whole other level of. Let's just say there's a bathroom back in the kitchen that's got stories of its own. If you could do a book in just that restroom back there, it's got stories of things it's seen, And, the lines of decadence,
Thankfully, I've managed to create some decadent rainbow stories of my own. So.
But yeah, it's funny, like Tom said, he goes, by the time I got here, that party had kind of dried up, and this is just where we came and we talked business. Business deals were done here at the Rainbow, and back in my day when I was going there, it was, that's where the party was getting rocked.
I'll say this: I got there kind of at the dawn of nu metal, and Slipknot, and it kind of had this fun resurgence in the early 2000s. All the Slipknot guys started hanging out there, and me and Corey hung out there, and the Cypress Hill guys hung out there, and all the kind of nu metal bands hung out there. And it had this really fun kind of, I think we all grew up on that 80s rock and that 80s kind of rainbow mystique. And I think there was kind of a fun, and now that's any semblance of that is sort of gone again. But there was a fun little run in the 2000s, man. We all grew up on Motley Crue and wanted to be Motley Crue. We just couldn't anymore, so we tried, but we.
Yeah. And I've always wanted to go there. Growing up in the 80s, I saw that happening, and one of the I still haven't been, but now it's. I think Chuck Wright is doing his. Well, he was doing the show on Wednesdays. At the Whiskey, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of keeping it alive. But now, but that was. It's what's going on there now. It's
nothing.
done.
The whole strip is so. It's
Weird.
sad, man. The last time we went there, me and David went out there to actually go shoot the video for Rob Peterson at Al's house, and we went to the Rainbow, and we kind of. The strip. It's sad seeing the strip Like and Mario passed, which to me is really. I mean, one of my first friends when I moved out there is Mike Maglieri, Mario's grandson. He was one of my first partners. We worked on a lot of stuff together, and so I really got to love and befriend the Maglieri family, and I just have such a reverence for the legacy of the Sunset Strip and the Whiskey and the Roxy and the Adlers and the Rainbow. And again, to me, I love that they're still trying to keep it going, and it is. And to me, it's still hallowed ground, but it kind of breaks my heart seeing everything kind of moving to downtown and these weird little places. And I really think we all supported that really hard in the 2000s, but again, it's sad to see the Strip kind of take the back seat to other areas of LA, and it's kind of.
Yeah, I just wonder where all the kids playing metal are, you know what I mean? Or playing.
Well, right now they're at home on Zoom.
Right.
The days, like we talked about earlier, the days of everybody moving to LA are over. LA, when I moved to LA, my first apartment was like $600. I'm sure when Dave moved there, it was like $200. But I mean, now, like the days of everybody, there's probably not as many bands playing. Like bands move out of LA now. That's what's funny. Bands move to the thing about LA is it's segregated. If you're on the East Coast, there's 50 markets in a 6-7 hour drive. If you're in the Midwest, same thing. If you're in LA, there's nothing, man. You got to drive 8 hours. There's San Diego. There's really not a lot around there. There's San Diego. There's Phoenix. There's Vegas. There's not a lot that's drivable. And so I think a lot of bands are just staying where they are. Some people are moving out of LA to go other places and start bands. I just think part of that is the dynamic of all the best musicians and the hottest girls and the coolest dudes all moved to LA to be actors and models and chase the dream. I don't think that happens anymore. I think now they stay home and make an internet page, and it's just a different dynamic,
Yeah. It's sad to see, and that's a great documentary if you guys haven't seen it or anybody hasn't seen it. About the Rainbow with the Maglieri.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, really, really cool. You fall in love with that family watching that thing, and
oh yeah. And I already love that family, man. They're some of my favorite people on earth. Mike and Tisa and obviously Mario and Mike Sr. And they're great people, and they've been so good to me over the years and let me shoot stuff. Actually, the way me and David met, which is in More Life with Death back there, is I produced and directed a mini documentary about the Shocker soundtrack that was on the Blu-ray that Scream Factory put out in 2015, I think. And the Rainbow is actually kind enough. My segments with Kane Hodder and a couple other people, they actually let me film those at the Rainbow. So they've always been so great to me with letting me film stuff there and do stuff. And, again, letting me do shows at the Whiskey. And again, it's kind of, they've always opened their doors of all of their venues to me. And I can't say enough amazing things about Mario and Mike and the Whiskey and that family.
That's killer. That's great. That's great. All right, man. You guys, I'm gonna let you go. I know we've been on for, we're talking about chemistry and stuff, and unrehearsed and just kind of shooting the shit and jamming together. This has been like a cool jam. You guys are great. It's just a cool conversation, and those are the best ones, man. It just rolls off the
Minnesota, they call it a hot
day. Yeah.
I brought him that. and remember, Ellefson no cover.
Yes, November 20th, Ellefson no cover, 19.
And don't forget, we're playing next week. So this Saturday, we're doing an in-store in Phoenix at Asylum Records, and you can come and pick up a copy of No Cover. We're doing an in-store for Record Store Day, and then the following weekend, we will be in San Antonio, Texas on the 30th, Slidell, Louisiana on Halloween, Houston on the day after Halloween, and then the week No Cover comes out, I think we will be in Pekin, Illinois, Indianapolis on the 18th, Chicago on the 19th at the WC Social Club. The 20th at the Social Club, the 19th in Indianapolis, and the 21st in Green Bay at Fatheads doing No Cover CD release parties. And again, we're going to go out and try and stay as safe as we can. And, but we just feel like, look, we got to get out, and somebody's got to go out and start the engine a little bit. And if we can go out, the great thing about this is we can do it in small venues. We can kind of social distance. We're doing some of the shows. I mean, all the ones in Texas are huge venues, so they can do half capacity. yeah, some of the shows in the Midwest, like literally one of them, I think the capacity is like 25. You know what I mean? So we're really taking it as seriously as we can with the distancing and the space, and we kind of have some rules for the meet and greets. And again, we're going to get out and try and be as personable and cool as we can, and meet as many people as we can, and see as many friends as we can, but while still keeping ourselves and our fans safe. You know?
Yeah. Totally. And Thom, I want to ask too. I know you had, was it a heart attack?
I had massive heart failure. I would describe it as my heart stopped, and yeah, my heart just stopped, and now I have a pacemaker. I got some Ironman upgrades. That was in July. That was literally right in the middle of making No Cover. Done.
You know, I heard it.
This record literally killed me.
Well, I heard, you know, that had happened, and then like 2 days later, you're posting shit. I'm like, the guy's a beast. Yeah.
It was actually like 6 days. So it happened on the day after the 4th of July. It was on July 5th. And then I was pretty much unconscious for a week. I basically woke up and it was the following Friday. And I had a little bit of memory loss. It took me a minute to put everything together. And then I kind of did. And then I got my phone back. So it was 5 or 6 days before I was posting. But yeah, look, 2 weeks later, I was in the studio finishing this fucking record, man. 2 weeks later, I went in and sang Eat the Rich and Beth, if that tells you anything.
He's like, there's no dying in rock and roll.
No, fuck that.
Get back to work. Yeah.
That's awesome. I want to ask you about the Pekin show though, in Illinois, because you know that's just a short couple-hour drive from me.
Great.
I definitely want to see you guys there. Are you guys going to be playing? You're going to be?
We will have the masks, so you will be ready to go. Right?
Are you bringing instruments, or are we just?
Oh no, we're playing. No, it's a full tour.
Yeah.
We're playing a bunch. It's record release shows for No Cover. We're playing some of the No Cover stuff, Simple Truth, some of the stuff we've never played live before. It's gonna be fun. But yeah, we're playing at the Twisted Spoke Saloon in Pekin. I got a 2019, so I guess on the 18th. I had to move backwards in my brain, but you can go find the ad mats and all the stuff on David's social media and mine, and wherever fine stuff is posted.
Yeah, I will definitely post a schedule too. So
please come see us, come hang out, come see our
definitely. I want to hang out with you guys, and you know, it's been a blast, man. Too cool. I love you guys, man. It's
man.
Best wishes to you. I will get the word out, and people need to pick up this record, man. It's just fucking killer.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Scott.
All right, man. Take care, you guys.
Yeah.
I'll see you soon.
Yep.
You will.
All right.